Hi students, I'm Priya. Welcome to Electra Pro e-content. In today's session, we are going to learn about the introduction of Linux and its architecture. So these are the contents which we are going to learn in today's session. That is about the naming of Linux, history of Linux, components and basic features of Linux, architecture of Linux, what is kernel, and GUI view of the Linux, comparison of Linux with different operating systems and its commands, and what are its merits and demerits, and its commercial use in the Linux operating system. And what is Linux? Linux is an open source operating system, and as we all know, that operating system is a software that communicates with the hardware and allows other programs to run. Linux is a freely distributable cross-platform operating system based on the Unix that can be installed on PCs, laptops, notepads, mobiles, tab devices, etc. And it was developed by Linus Torvalds on September 17, 1991. The source code can be modified and distributed to anyone commercially or non-commercially under the GNU, that is General Public License. Linus Torvalds had wanted to call this invention as freaks, that is freaks plus X, as an allusion to Unix. In this project, this partner, Mr. A.L. Torvalds, did not think it's a good name, so they finally decided to name this project as Linux. The history of Linux. Unix was developed by Thomson and Ritchie at T. Bell Labs in 1969, and the commercial vendors are Sun, HP, IBM, SGI, Dell. And GNU was invented by Richard Stallman and FSF in 1994, and its commercial open source is GPL. Coming to the components of the Linux, these are the three major components of the Linux system. Those are kernel, system libraries, and system utilities. Kernel, as we all know, that kernel is the core part of the Linux. It is responsible for all major activities of this operating system. It consists of various modules and interacts directly with the underlying hardware. Kernel provides the required abstraction to hide low-level hardware details to system or the application programs. And next, coming to the system library. Library are the special functions or programs using which application programs or the system utilities access kernel features. These libraries implement most of the functionalities of the operating system and do not require kernel modules code access rights. And next, coming to the system utility. System utility programs are responsible to do specialized individual level tasks. So these are the brief description about the components of the Linux system. Coming to the basic features of the Linux. Linux is portable, open source multi-programming and secure. Portable means that is the software can be developed on any type of the hardware, and it's a open source, it's a freely available and anyone can download from the internet. Multi-programming because multiple applications can run at the same time. Linux is mostly secured using authentication features like password protection, controlled access to specific files, encryption of data. Most of them use businesses for the Linux purpose for its security purpose. And next, coming to the architecture of the Linux operating system. So this figure shows the architecture of the Linux. The architecture of the Linux consists of these following layers. These are the following layers shown in the diagram. Initially, the hardware layer, that is the bottom layer, consists of all peripherals devices like CPU, RAM, input outputs, HDD, etc. And next, coming to the kernel layer, as we have discussed in components, that kernel is the core part of the Linux. It is responsible for all major activities of this operating system. It consists of various modules and it interacts directly with the hardware. Kernel provides the required abstraction to hide low-level hardware details to system or application programs. And kernel modules is nothing but this layer takes the instructions from the kernel, and this will act as an interface between the hardware layer. And next, coming to the system libraries. System libraries is nothing but these are the special functions or the programs using which application programs or system utilities access kernel features. So these libraries implement most of the functionalities of the operating system, and these do not require kernel modules code access rights. And these libraries consists of the system softwares, user process, user utilities, and these compilers. And this layer acts as the interface between the application layer and the kernel. That is, it will interact with the users and it will accept the commands from the users, and this will be provided to the kernel. So now coming to the kernel. Kernel is, as we have said, it's a core part of the operating system. It interacts with the actual hardware and the machine language, and it has various functions like such as file management, data transfer between file system and hardware, memory management, scheduling of various programs in the memory, interrupt issues, etc. It is a monarch who has overall control of everything. So that's why it's called as a core part of the operating system. And the shell takes commands from users and executes kernel's functions. And next coming to this shows the desktop view of the Linux. And this is the inside view of the Linux. If you'll open the Linux then file, then it will show our desktop like this. Next, comparison of Linux with the various operating systems. Linux versus Windows. Linux is a freely available or online downloads for Windows companies have pay for their license. Windows need up to date time to time, and its updating process is slower than Linux. Linux is an open source operating system, so user can change the source code as per the requirement, whereas Windows OS is a commercial operating system, so user does not have the access to change the source code. And Linux supports the backward compatibility unlike to the Windows. Most of the software made on the Windows are need to be licensed, but in the Linux, all of them are freely available. Linux is very well secure as it is easy to detect bugs and fix, whereas Windows has huge cyber base, so it becomes a target to hackers to attack Windows system easily. So for this purpose, mainly Linux is mainly used as a secured purpose. So these Linux is mainly used in the business systems, and Linux files are ordered in a tree structure, but where starting with the root directory. But whereas in the Windows, files are stored in the folders. For example, take local disk C and local disk D, E, respectively. And next coming Linux versus iOS. First of all, what is iOS? iOS is nothing but a mobile operating system which is provided by the Apple Incorporation. It is mainly designed for Apple mobile devices like iPhone and iPod Touch. It is a Unix line like OS which is based on Darwin operating system, and it is the world's second most used mobile operating system after the Android. So let's compare the Linux with the iOS with these features. Hardware requirement. iOS have restrictive hardware requirement while Linux doesn't. Customizability. iOS gives restrictions in the arrangement of your data or display, whereas Linux can make it simpler, easy as you want. Security. In terms of security, both of them are highly secured. They do not give direct permission to their system administrator. So hackers can't hack these systems easily by using these operating systems. So coming to the commands. We have different command list, more list of commands, but these are some of the commands which we use regularly. Those are is, which is used for listing the commands; mv, which is used to move the command; mkdir, which is used to make the directories; rmdir, which is used to the remove directories; locate, which is used to locate directories; delete, these is used to delete the directory. These are some of the examples of the commands of the Linux. And why should we use Linux? Because Linux is inexpensive and it is stable, it's reliable, and moreover, it's a highly secured and it's an extremely powerful operating system. So these are the reasons why we should use the Linux. Merits and demerits of the Linux. It can be easily accessible to the old computers. It cannot be made for gaming purpose. It is not easy to understand for those who are new to Linux. It is mostly used for the programmers. It is used for both commercial and the personal, but for home purpose. For this, Windows is mostly preferred for home purpose and use of the Linux in the various fields. In our day-to-day life, we are using a Linux operating system for Android app development, operating system for routers, that is transmitting devices, and is also used in the gaming purpose designing. What so last but not least, the commercial use of the Linux operating system is it's widely started in the mid of 1990s for supercomputing purpose. Today, Linux systems are used throughout computing, from embedded systems to supercomputers, and provide a secure place in server installations such as a popular LAMP application stack. And Linux has achieved a greater success in the field of mobile development with the Android by providing ease access and high security feature. So that's all, students, about the Linux and its architecture. And we will meet in the another session. Thank you.